The time has come for you to get yourself ready for the Toefl speaking section with the tips that will really make a difference when you go to the exam. In this video, I'll go question by question to give you the best strategy to score really high. Stay here with me and you won't regret it. Hey guys, welcome to channel Nova Tips. I'm Leo Nova, and in this video I'm gonna talk a little more about the speaking section on Toefl. If you wanna watch this video 100% in Portuguese, just click on the card right here. The Toefl speaking section takes place just after the mandatory 10-minute break. At this point, you have already done the reading and the listening sections, took your 10 minutes break, and are back to the speaking session. I have a very good tip for these 10 minutes break. At the very end of this video, I'll talk about it. Stay with me until the end and you won't regret it. Well, let's go to the tips. Be aware of the response time. In this part of the test specifically, we'll be talking with a computer which is super uncomfortable. And each question is divided into 3 moments. The computer reads you the questions and show on the screen. You have a time to think about your answer. That's the second. And you have time to answer. It all looks great, right? But that's where hell starts. For each question, you have 15 to 30 seconds to think and 45 to 60 seconds to answer. When I talk about being aware of the response time, the ideal is that you use all this time for your response with relevant information. You should not be silent for even a second or exceed the time. Because, the computer cuts the audio and nobody will know what you said afterwards.
But Nova, how am I going to start having this sense of time?
How? Guess what? Practicing! 50, 100, 200, 500 times. Over time, you start to get a better sense of how much you can say in 45 seconds and how much you can say in 60 seconds. Each response from you needs to have a defined outline. But I'll tell you about this in a little bit. Please don't forget to like this video and, to help me to improve this channel. And also don't forget to subscribe, okay? Now let's go to the second tip. Run away from templates. The first few times I took the test, some of the videos I had been watching here had advised me to memorize templates with fancy words and all that. I totally believed that this would add some points to my score. After all, who doesn't want to demonstrate mastery of language by speaking fancy words, huh? But when I got my grade, oh gosh, that was a disaster. After researching a little bit more, I found out that these templates people suggest, actually, they get in the way. Follow my thought here. If you start with a very pompous speech and end with the traditional broken English, it's obvious. It demonstrates that you are faking it somehow. The examiner will know that. So remember, don't follow templates. If you have practiced a lot before, which is the ideal, some sentences will automatically come to your mind. Don't worry. Sometimes, out of nowhere, you will come up with some sentences that you see that fits in various situations and end up memorizing anyways. Do you know what I did? Remember that document I told you to create, saving some vocabularies you find interesting? The one I mentioned on the 7 killer tips on how to master Toefl? So, write down the sentences that you think are interesting for the speaking section there as well. Do you want an example I used it myself? After doing some, 50, 100 times practicing, I saw that I could use in almost all the following sentences. Although people say, because the exams will always have questions like, there are people who thinks this is cool and people who thinks that is cool. Now, memorize fancy sentences just to make a good impression. This is a trap. Now, let's dig into the structure of each question. As I mentioned before, there will be only 4 questions in the test. This is the shortest section of the entire exam. However, the scariest for me. Question number 1 is like an icebreaker. It's called independent question, and it's the only one we have in the test. This question requests you to talk about something that you are comfortable with. They can be questions like, What is your favorite place to go for a walk? Who is your idol? Things like that. In this question, you have 15 seconds to think and 45 seconds to answer. This question has no specific structure, and for this reason, it may be tricky. If I were on your shoes, I would write down the answer in 1 or 2 words and 2 reasons or adjectives or characteristics why you picked the answer. Let's give an example. Let's say that the question is, what is your dream job? In these 15 seconds, I would write on the paper about 3 or 4 words. YouTuber, flexibility, inspiration. Done. I already know that I will talk. Being a YouTuber gives me the flexibility to set up my schedules and the possibility to inspire others around the world. Those words are just your guideline. It helps to avoid things like, So you take the first 5 seconds to do your statement. My dream job is to be YouTuber. Done. You answer the question. But you still have roughly 40 more seconds to speak, right? That's where the explanation comes in. But if you get straight to the point, you won't feel all the 40 seconds remaining. You can't say, because it gives me flexibility and I inspire people. No, you should extend a little bit more. Something like, my dream job is to be a YouTuber. Although people say that it's important to have a work routine with time to get in and out of the office, I believe that having flexibility to make personal commitments is essential to develop a job with excellence. You see, I said the same thing, but I spend more time and give more vocabulary and information.
But Nova, what if I can't talk about each one of them for 20 seconds?
Well, as I told you, this question is the easiest because it's about a subject that you already know, but it could turn to one of the most difficult if you're not prepared for it. There is no rule to answer this question. You'll only find out when you are there with having 15 seconds to pull it all together. My tip here is, if the question is something that you can explain in many details, take 1 reason or 2 at most and explain.
Hey Nova, did you say 1 reason?
Yes, there's no rule here, remember? So if you can talk about only 1 reason for 45 seconds, go for it. The idea is choose 2 reasons because it gives you a reasonable time to develop on each one. But if you're not very confident about how to elaborate on the explanations, better take more, 3 or 4 at most, and talk briefly about each one. In this case, you need to describe less each one of them to fill up the 45 seconds. Just be careful to not take too many things and become a list of items. I know I'm talking a lot about question 1, but relax, the explanation for the next ones will be way simpler, but not easy. One more thing, if you take 2, 3, 4 reasons, you don't need to describe them equally like, oh, I took 2 reasons, so I have to talk 20 seconds about each one. No. If you think you have more arguments to advocate for one of them, talk more about this one and less about the others. The important thing is to fill all the time up. Another extra important tip on question 1. Program yourself to respond in 40 seconds.
No, wait. You just said we have to use all the 45 seconds. Now you tell me that I have to use only 40? What's going on here?
For God's sake, I don't want to confuse you. I just want to help you. And this here will help you a lot, trust me. We're not machines to be able to program our brains to respond correctly using the 45 seconds, right? There will be times that the answer will be a little less than 45 seconds. Other times it will be a little bit over 45 seconds. So why did I tell you to program yourself to respond in 40 seconds? If I am answering and, I'm planning to answer in 40 seconds, but I messed up for some reason and I go over, I have these 5 seconds to adjust my answer. If you are on your time, as planned, in the 5 final seconds, you can say, and these are the reasons why and repeat what was asked.
What if I still have 10 seconds to answer and I said everything I could?
Well, this is not the ideal world, right? You'll be trained for months. You should have more control over the time, but okay. If you're up to about 10 seconds, you can extend your conclusion by saying, so, to sum up, these argument and these arguments are the reasons why, and then you say your answer again.
But Nova, If I have more than 10 seconds and I went through everything I have already?
Well, then you better study a little bit more. It's not gonna happen.
What if I don't know anything about the subject that was asked?
If you don't know anything about what is being asked, focus on the part you know. For example, let's say that the question is, are you for or against exploring the surface of Mars without prior regulation? First of all, this is the type of question you are very unlikely to see in the test. In this particular case, how do you answer? How do you find two arguments if you can't even think of one? Right, here's my tip. Focus on the part that you have better knowledge and develop it. What do you know about the question? You know what exploration is, right? Focus on it. Your answer might be something like, I'm against the exploration of the surface of Mars. In fact, exploration is a word that goes against my values. Exploration is directly related to blah blah blah. And you can end the sentence with, and that's why I'm against exploring the surface of Mars. Done. You answered following the topic and without fancy answers based on firstly, secondly, finally. Final tip for question 1. I know it's a lot of information, but I don't want to let you down. Remember that you are there to answer questions in a coherent way and to be evaluated by your English, not to tell the truth about your life. Nobody's going to investigate your life to find out if that's your dream job, if that's your favorite friend. Think about what is more convenient for you. If it's asked what's your favorite ice cream, let's say it's a flavor you only find in your country and you don't know how to say it in English. Switch for banana, lemon, vanilla, anything you can pronounce correctly. No one will follow you afterwards to confirm your favorite ice cream flavor is. Wow. That's all for question 1, but I promise to be faster in the next ones. Question 2 and 3. In these questions, you have to read a short passage, about 80 to 100 words, and then you have a short audio with the same subject, around a minute and a half. Once this time is over, you will have 30 seconds to set up your answer and 60 seconds to answer. The text and the audio have some relationship between them. For instance, the passage talks about a new rule at the university that students can no longer study at the library after midnight. And the audio will be 2 students talking about this decision, usually one against and one in favor. Your goal here is to summarize everything and explain in 60 seconds. How do you prepare to answer these questions? Well, when reading the text, try to read as soon as possible. You already have an idea of what will be said in the audio. You write down the keywords of the text on the paper right away. It will disappear from the screen before the audio starts and will never return. Then make 2 columns that you can call A and B, man and woman. And as you go listen the audio, you write down the characteristics that each one spoke. For example, the man is in favor. His dorm is in front of the library and the noise disturbs him to sleep. Woman, against. Work late. I would write down all this while listening to the audio. When the audio is over, in the 30 seconds you have to prepare, you set up the answer in your head. But the outline is always the same. First, you say what the subject is, what was said in the text you read. Then, you say that there were 2 students, if so, talking about the subject, that he or she was in favor of this, and these reasons, and the other one was against because of these, and these reasons. Here is more difficult to have those final 5 seconds to summarize what you said, because everything you are talking about is already disseminated, so just practice a lot. Question 4. In the last question, you not need to read anything. It will have a very short audio, less than 2 minutes, and then you kind of have to summarize what was said in the audio. In this question, you have 20 seconds to think and 60 seconds to answer. Sometimes you have to list what solutions were proposed in the audio or list the arguments shown. Basically, summarize what was said again. However, of course, there's a catch. It may be asked for your opinion, like, which one do you think is more efficient? In this case, once again, you don't need to be honest or politically correct. Nobody's caring about your opinion. They will only evaluate your English. Take the option that you understood better or the one you know to argue better and go for it. If your opinion is not asked, Then develop the arguments that were spoken in the audio. Remember, you need to fill up all the 60 seconds with content. If asked for your opinion, just state the options you have briefly and go for your arguments. Remember the tip I told you about the 10 minutes break? The time has come for it. If you want to go for the restroom, drink some water, go for it. But come back as soon as possible. Most likely, you were not the first to enter to take the test. There are other people who started before you. When you were on your break, these people are likely to already be doing the speaking part. It is a good time to pay attention to the answers they are providing to get an idea of what the topics are about. But be careful, don't do what I did on my first time there. I wrote down everything the others were saying to help me. What happened? The inspector came and took my notes paper away. That I already had everything I needed there, including some tips for writing. That is, try to be smart, but don't try too hard. Listen carefully to what others are saying, and you have a good idea of what is to come. Avoid talking like you're bored, like one of the reasons that led me to... No! Put some heart on your answer. I know you're talking to a computer, okay, but who will evaluate you is a real person. So do you like to talk to someone with that bored voice? Nobody likes it. Now, imagine the evaluator listening dozens of tests, which is already quite exhaustive, and still come across a candidate with this bored tone. And more, with this immigrant accent. That's too much. So be enthusiastic with your responses, okay? Well, those are the tips for TOEFL speaking. I hope you've enjoyed it. Don't forget to like the video, share with your friends, subscribe to the channel, and make any comments you want down here. See you later!